as Canada is, of course, seeking to diversify its economy. The goal is to be closer to the EU, and in the context of the EU, two countries that we know we can do more business with and that we can also continue to develop strong partnerships is definitely Sweden and Finland.
Expanding Canada's oil and gas infrastructure has long been a contentious topic, but tough tariffs have forced the country to take a closer look at its sovereignty.
It addresses two key priorities for the Carney government. One, trade diversification, which is the new mantra in response to Trump's tariffs. It also fits into the other objective of Canada becoming an energy superpower, the likes of which Saudi Arabia, Russia, the United States. Canada certainly has the natural resource endowments to become an energy superpower.
Canada just did the unthinkable right in front of the world. After decades of calling the U.S. its most trusted economic partner, Ottawa suddenly turned north and east, shaking hands with Sweden and calling it strategy. The message is loud and clear. Canada just drew a new line, and this time, it's not across the border. It's across the alliance. The U.S. buys around $120 billion worth of Canadian energy every single year. That's the backbone of Canada's economy: oil, gas, and pipelines flowing south. So, when Ottawa suddenly started courting Sweden in August 2025, people in Washington took notice. It wasn't just a deal, it was a red flag waving right in America's face. Why would a country built on U.S. trade suddenly risk everything for a Nordic alliance? That question has been haunting every policy room in D.C.
We will be there to support the workers. I've been in contact also with many of their union leaders, and we will be there to make sure that they can continue to innovate while they're in a very stressful business environment. And so we know that we can help them continue to invest, and we won't let the sector down.
The new deal between Canada and Sweden was announced as a strategic partnership, but the fine print tells a different story. It's not just about cooperation. It's a $500 billion pivot away from America's grip. The agreement stretches across energy, critical minerals, and digital infrastructure. Sweden, of course, walked away smiling. They got access to Canada's mineral riches, Arctic shipping routes, and future gas pipelines. Canada walked away thinking it gained independence. But what it really got was isolation. Analysts are already calling it the Nordic backstab, a move that pretends to be bold but reeks of desperation. Instead of standing up to Washington's tariffs, Ottawa tried to go around them. Instead of fixing the problem, it ran from it. Canada's leadership is gambling the country's economy just to prove it can act without permission. But here's the twist. Trump saw it coming long before anyone else did.
I think it'll have a dramatic effect on Canada, and it's going to force Canada to take a stand like the U.S. is taking. And Canada needs to push the imports that come into Canada out to create a robust Canadian market where Canadian steel can be consumed in Canada and pushed out, just like the U.S. is trying to do. That'll balance the trade between the U.S. and Canada, and then hopefully we can get to a resolution between the two countries where we need to be.
To understand how we got here, you have to rewind. The tension didn't start with Sweden. It started in Washington. When Trump brought back tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and energy, Ottawa froze. Canada's leaders talked tough on camera, but caved behind closed doors. They dropped retaliatory taxes, delayed digital levies, and pleaded for exceptions. Trump didn't have to threaten them. He just stayed quiet. That silence was brutal. It forced Canada to blink first. Within months, Trump had re-established total dominance without a single negotiation. That's not politics, that's power. It was a message to everyone watching. America doesn't need to fight for leverage because it already owns it. When the biggest customer in the world, the US, buys your resources, you don't hold the cards. Washington does. Canada tried to talk big, but its economy depends too much on that southern border. Trump knew that. He let them stew, crack, and fold, all without lifting a pen. So when the tariffs kept hurting, Canada started looking for a way out. And that's how the Nordic gamble was born. Ottawa turned to Stockholm and Helsinki, hoping that a shiny new partnership would send a message to Trump, "We don't need you." But what looked like confidence was really panic.
Mark Carney has set a lot higher bar for himself than that, so there is political risk for him if he continues to travel as much as he has, but doesn't get the results of building and doing things faster than we've seen before in Canada, which has been one of his key campaign lines.
We share broad. It's a good question. Actually, don't know what we share, to be honest. I mean, how's that for an honest answer?
Can you tell us a few of the people you've met?
We met today with a number of infrastructure, basically infrastructure type investors. So people who have global capital invest around the world, largely in infrastructure projects.
Mark Carney's trip across Scandinavia was supposed to be a breakthrough. Meetings with Sweden's Prime Minister, breakfasts with CEOs from Saab, Ericsson, and AstraZeneca. Press conferences full of smiles and flags. The headlines called it a new industrial alliance. But beneath all the handshakes, there was nothing concrete. No major gas exports, no real guarantees, just talk. Critics back home saw right through it. They said it was like a teenager storming out of the house saying, "I don't need you anymore," only to come crawling back when the bills pile up. Canada wanted to look strong, but ended up looking insecure. It wasn't about new markets. It was about saving face after Trump's economic chokehold. Sweden and Finland, of course, played along. Why wouldn't they? They get access to Canada's resources, defense contracts, and Arctic projects, while Canada gets a pat on the back and a photo op. The Nordic leaders know this isn't about equality. It's about Ottawa trying to prove a point. And here's the painful truth. Canada doesn't have the leverage it thinks it does. No European partnership can replace the US market. America is still the biggest buyer, the biggest investor, and the most powerful trade ally Canada has. Every dollar that Canada tries to redirect toward Europe is a dollar that risks its own economy back home.
Let's talk about fighter jets briefly. For years, it seemed like Canada's choice for its next fighter jet was a done deal. The Lockheed Martin F-35, that stealthy fifth-generation powerhouse from the US, was a contract waiting to be signed, but then geopolitics changed. The era of America First under President Trump and the new trade tensions it brought really rattled Canada's trust. It was a wake-up call. Suddenly, buying a plane wasn't just about military capability, it was about strategic autonomy. Canada realized that relying solely on one ally, even a close one, was no longer a smart move. So the F-35 procurement is now back under review. The Canadian government, now under Prime Minister Mark Carney, has openly said it's reassessing the deal to make sure that it's the right fit for a changing world. And this is where this conversation gets interesting, because now we're talking about a contender that was once dismissed. Sweden's Saab Gripen. On paper, the Gripen isn't the same class as the F-35. It's a fourth-generation fighter, and it can't really match the F-35's advanced stealth capabilities, but that's not the whole story. The Gripen brings a lot of unique benefits to the table. For one, Saab has offered to assemble the planes in Canada, which could mean a huge boost to Canada's domestic aerospace industry and create jobs. It's a plane designed for rugged conditions. It can even operate from makeshift roads, which is perfect for patrolling Canada's vast and remote Arctic regions. And critically, it doesn't require the same deep integration with the US systems as the F-35.
The fighter jet drama is where this whole story goes from awkward to downright hilarious. For years, everyone knew the F-35 deal was a done deal. America's golden stealth jet, a fifth-generation powerhouse that Canada was practically born to buy. It was like the shiny trophy every US ally dreams of having. But then, after Trump's tariffs hit like a hammer, Ottawa started getting a little flirty. Suddenly, Canada was whispering to Sweden about maybe, just maybe, ditching the American jets for something different.
So I think when it comes to our defense budget, we know that we'll get to 3.5% of our GDP. Canada is the ninth biggest economy, and when you think about 3.5% of GDP, it's an enormous amount of investments in our Canadian armed forces, in our brave men and women supporting the defense of our sovereignty and our leadership around the world. But at the same time, we'll be able to invest in our industrial capacity. And that's why I'm working on a new defense industrial strategy in concert with my colleague, the Minister of Defense. There is a study right now that is being done by the Defense Department. It is being led by the Minister of Defense. My job in the context of this decision is to look at options and to understand what could be the different economic benefits. I've had the chance at the Paris Air Show back in June to meet with Saab for the first time and to meet with Lockheed Martin as well. I wanted to make sure that we could understand what was being proposed by Saab, by going to their facility in Sweden, and also having the Secretary of State, Stephen Fuhr, with me. And we will be able also to meet with Lockheed Martin and do a similar operation later in the coming weeks.
And who comes knocking? Sweden, with that classic Scandinavian charm. Hey, why buy from the US when you can have our Saab Gripen? It's cheaper, simpler, and hey, we'll even build them right there in Canada. Think of the jobs. Think of the independence. It sounded seductive. Strategic autonomy, they called it. But let's be real, this was less about jets and more about sending a message. The Gripen isn't a bad plane. It's fast, flexible, and looks sleek in the sky. But here's the catch. It's a fourth-generation fighter. The F-35, fifth generation. That's like trading in a Tesla for a used Jeep and calling it innovation. They're not even in the same class. The F-35 is stealthy, packed with sensors, and practically flies itself. The Gripen, it's solid, but it doesn't exactly scream superpower. And while Canada was busy patting itself on the back, Sweden and its Nordic partners were quietly cashing in. Swedish corporations started getting slices of Canada's resource pie. Critical minerals, energy projects, Arctic routes, all the good stuff. In fact, Sweden walked away with most of the tangible benefits: new jobs, technology access, and long-term leverage in the Arctic. Canada, it got headlines and the illusion of control.
We will be coming up in the coming months with a new strategy, but short term, what we're doing is we've just given the BDC a mandate to make sure that they can start supporting companies that want to invest in defense. We are giving the mandate to the National Research Council to make sure that our researchers across the country can also do dual use research, so civil and military, which I think is really important. So we'll be working with universities on that. We will be working with the Canadian Space Agency.
And that's when Trump made his move, or rather, didn't. He didn't tweet, didn't threaten, didn't call anyone out. He just waited. That's the thing about Trump. He knows timing better than anyone. The Financial Times even confirmed it. Canada got zero tariff relief. Zero. Nothing. All that strategic partnership talk, and not a single concession from the US. Trump's golden rule of business was on full display. Never give something for nothing. And he didn't. He didn't need to. He just let Ottawa hang itself with its own promises. While Canada was out there holding press conferences with Swedish ministers, Trump looked like the alpha in total control. Then came the inevitable backfire, the part everyone saw coming except, apparently, Ottawa. While Canadian officials were busy calling it a partnership of equals, Sweden saw it for what it was: opportunity. They got access to rare earth elements, energy routes, and Arctic infrastructure deals. In other words, Sweden got rich. And Canada got burned. The US noticed immediately. Energy exports started stumbling, investments began drifting south, and American buyers quietly shifted back to domestic suppliers. It didn't take long before analysts in Europe started whispering, "This isn't strategy, it's optics." A stunt meant to look strong, not be strong.
All the kinds of names Carney's trying to attract to invest in Canada, but the issue for Carney going forward could politically be his own ethics issues. He has over 100 companies that he can't be involved in discussion with because of his own personal investment and past ties.
That's the cruel twist. In trying to show the world it could stand on its own, Canada ended up exposing how dependent it really is. It wanted to send a warning shot to Trump, but ended up shooting itself in the foot. Sweden didn't backstab America. Canada backstabbed its own economy. Now Sweden's walking away richer, stronger, and better connected. Canada's walking away with bruised pride and a lot of awkward questions. And Trump? He didn't have to do a thing. He let them fold, then smiled. Because at the end of the day, power isn't about who talks loudest. It's about who can afford to stay silent. And this time, that silence came from Washington, not Ottawa. And just like that, the Nordic dream started to look more like a political hangover. The hype was gone, the numbers didn't add up, and the domestic backlash hit harder than a slap shot to the face. Suddenly, MarkCarney, the man who was supposed to reinvent Canada's economy, was being called soft, weak, and delusional. Parliament turned into a verbal hockey fight. "500 billion promises, 0 results," one MP shouted, while another yelled, "Where's the gas money? Where's the tariff relief?" It was chaos. Polite? Canadian chaos, but chaos nonetheless.
We're also working on key transactions right now to make sure that we can create more jobs through defense procurement across the country. And finally, middle and longer term will be the defense strategy. But
voters weren't buying the strategic autonomy talk anymore either. They wanted receipts. The gas deal with Sweden? Still in negotiations. Tariff relief from Washington? Not even close. Meanwhile, Carney's approval ratings were dropping faster than the Canadian dollar in a trade war. The man who was supposed to show elbows-up toughness was now the face of handshakes and surrender. And behind it all, Trump's grin just got wider. His whole narrative, that Canada can't move an inch without U.S. permission, was aging like fine wine.
Of SAB, of AstraZeneca, of ABB, and Ericsson. And we already know that there are lots of very important Swedish companies that are doing business across Canada.
Canada isn't just rebelling, it's repositioning. For decades, almost 3/4 of Canada's exports have flowed south, all feeding one customer, the United States. It built Canada's prosperity, but also its dependency. One policy shift in Washington, one tariff tweet, and Ottawa feels the tremor across its entire economy. That's not partnership, that's pressure. So now, Canada is trying to break that cycle. It's not abandoning America, it's hedging its future. By opening doors in Europe, it's betting on a world no longer dominated by a single buyer. Sweden, Finland, and Germany are just the beginning. But here's the danger. Can Canada really pull this off without losing the one partner it can't afford to alienate? Can a country built on U.S. trade suddenly stand alone on the global stage and survive the fallout? Because the truth is, this isn't just a gas deal. It's a declaration that Canada refuses to be trapped by a single handshake, even if breaking free means walking through the fire first. Like this video and subscribe to the channel to get more updates on the U.S.-Canada relationship.